So I am really, really chuffed to have Rachael Crowe here. And she's somebody that I was the first person, one of the first people actually I thought about when I thought about asking people to come and join us and talk about their boundaries. And I think we've only met in person once, is that right, in Wales?
Yeah.
And I was aware of you before that and always really admired your work. And it was really, really cool to meet you in person that day. And yeah, the first thing that I noticed about you was your boundaries. And so when I thought about these calls, I was really hoping that you'd say yes to a video call. So thank you so much for joining us. So this is Rachael Crowe, everybody, and she is a wise woman, a intuitive, a healer. You run women's circles and certainly have done, haven't you, in the past? And you work with empowerment, and we have really similar stuff that we work with here. So it's really, really cool and exciting for you to share some of your thoughts with us today. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you are and what you've been doing recently?
Sure. Well, first of all, really honoured to be asked to be on this, Ruth. And it's funny because I've been sitting with doing a course of my own on boundaries the last 2 years and just never got it together. So I think it's great. I always, when someone else does it, I always go, great, I don't have to do it. I can just recommend them. So yeah, boundaries is huge, isn't it? It's from, when I started thinking about it, I was like, God, when did I first start learning about boundaries? And I think it was, becoming a mother, actually, for me. Our children are the biggest teachers with boundaries. Certainly my mother was with me, and maybe how not to do boundaries as well. But where I'm at the moment, so I've just been through a whole year of cancer treatment, which has been taken up a lot of my time. And I know everyone else has been in lockdown, and I've had the opposite of having quite a busy year, but also a real year of putting up boundaries, self-care, self-love. That I always think that's where boundaries come from, is that kind of how we look after ourselves. So yeah, it's been a very different year for me in my whole life, and compared to what everyone else has been through this year. So yeah, I finished treatment in January, so I've had like 3 months of just going, oh, this is what everyone else has been dealing with in the world. Quite strange. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And you're in remission now, is that right?
Yeah, well, my last scan showed completely clear, although I had a conversation with my oncologist last year, so this is like, been a whole thing of like holding your sovereignty and holding your boundaries in the medical system is really hard. It's really, I've had to pull myself up by my boots. And they're just fear mongering, and they were telling me I'm still at risk and I should still have this treatment and that treatment, and I'm just going, well, you know what, I feel fine. And all the other work that I'm doing to support my health, I completely trust in. So this is where I'm at the moment. Yeah. So I don't know whether you can ever say completely clear, because I think everybody's got cancer cells in their bodies. Some bodies deal with them better than others. So at the moment I am radiant health, is what I affirm to myself.
Gorgeous. So let me ask you the big question, the big general question, and see where you want to go with that. So where are your boundaries?
Wow. So I would say, as an empath, as an intuitive, as someone who works with energy, my boundaries are the bubble of light that I live in. But also on a physical level, when I moved to this house, I decided this house was going to be my healing sanctuary. So, my home is my boundary as well. And there's certain things that aren't allowed into my home. So there's a whole boundary there. Yeah. And I was kind of reflecting on, you introduced me as someone who holds circles, and I spent years holding circles, and as an empath, that's a really interesting thing to hold, because I think it's part of our gift of like, we're really aware of the energy in the room, we're aware of everyone in the room, and what can almost feel what they're going through, and the discomfort, and you almost are the boundary. The person facilitating is the container. You start off your circle kind of with the guidance of what you're going to be doing, you know, the boundaries, the rules, or, you know, whatever you want to call them. And I kind of realized that although I love that work, it did impact on my health. Kind of hands up, absolutely. You know, interesting. I've always, you know, held this fascination with the fact that I got cancer in my cervix, my womb, my ovaries after doing women's work for 30 years. You know, and it's like, wow, you know, I think I believe I've been doing a lot of clearing for all of those women, you know, and for, you know, the world-wide womb. You know, it's kind of not to take things personally. You know, it's like, actually, you know, we all are doing work on behalf of the collective. You know, it's we're all one, you know, aren't we? Ultimately, our energy is all one. So how you have boundaries when you're all one. So.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one for me as well, is that balance or play between feeling expansive and acknowledging and knowing that we are doing work with a collective, and feeling that, and, you know, the certain subjects that maybe each woman works with that is tuned into the collective. You know, like mine, for example, is part of the rape aspect of that. Other people might be, you know, the birth aspect. There's everything, isn't there? And tuning into that enormousness of the history of it, what's going on in the world right now, and then being able also, so and instead of but, you know, and bringing that back into, okay, and where are my boundaries, so that I can hold myself within this expansiveness as well as being a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love for you to talk to us about what you mentioned briefly at the beginning about the hospital situation and holding your boundaries as you within that medical system, and the, you know, the cult of the expert, all of that work. What would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of us, I don't include myself in it because I've never trusted doctors. So it's like, but so many people do, and I watched that in my family as well. Kind of, you know, I was raised with a mum who didn't trust the doctor system, and my father who did, and my father was a hypochondriac and ended up with cancer as well. So, you know, it's kind of like watching those two paths, and then of course I ended up having to tread the middle way, as we usually do, because I did the whole, you know, screw you, I'm not doing anything you tell me, I'm going to do my own thing, and that didn't work. So I kind of had to surrender to, okay, I need some intervention here. And I think it's always about asking questions. I mean, the communication with doctors is diabolical, actually, and if you don't know the questions to ask, then how can you know what to ask? You know, it's one of those. So I was very blessed to have friends and a mentor that kind of supported me. You know, I'd have phone calls between appointments, and kind of, you know, it's kind of gathering the tools, isn't it? It's all about the tools, and knowing the organizations that will support you and all those things. But I mean, even, you know, when I eventually put my hands up and said, okay, I'll have chemotherapy, which I really didn't want to have, you know, I spoke to a doctor at the Penny Bronze Centre, and he said, at any point you can stop, at any point you can ask them to lower the dose, you know, it's all in your hands. And I had no idea that you could do that. I kind of thought, once you're on that train ride, you can't get off. So, you know, really holding your autonomy in it. And they will argue with you as well. They'll kind of go, oh no, you're doing so well, but, you know, keep going. You know, you're like, but I don't want to. You know, it's always my body, my choice. You know, that mantra, you know, I've had that ever since doing birth work, and, you know, having my own babies. It's like, you know, I want this birth to be my, you know, my way, but also you have to surrender to the way the baby wants to be born too. So again, it's, you know, always juggling, but yeah, always knowing that you can change your mind. And that was one of the things I remember teaching in cycle work as well. It's like, you're a different woman every week. You might agree to something one week, but the next week you don't want to do it anymore. You know? And that it's okay to change your mind. You know, it's like, and it's okay to say no after you've said yes, and it's okay to say yes after you've said no. You know, that I know that, you know, that can be blurry boundaries, and it's something that I sometimes have to talk to my kids with, that maybe mummy said no too quickly there. It's like, let's have a discussion about it, you know. So yeah, I mean, I know, yeah, I've always been more of a no person than a yes person in my life, which I've all kind of gone, oh well, I'm really boundaried because I know where to say no, but actually there's two extremes, isn't there? So it's kind of having to really learn that balance of taking a breath, you know, if I'm not sure, and sometimes just going, I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to think about this, you know, I'll get back to you. Which is what I did a lot of with the doctor's appointments and conversations. You know, they make a decision on your behalf and you kind of go, I quite like some time to think about that before I agree to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. So I was in a, you know, not similar, but I recognize the similarities with my third baby that I had over the last year. And I'd had 2 home births previously, and just been really blessed with ease, you know, and been able to be totally sovereign in all of my choices, and found them really healing and empowering in that way. And then with my third, who was my first daughter, interestingly, she brought me the healing of, like you say, having to meet the boundaries much more closely and decide whether actually being in hospital was going to be a good idea. And we did birth in hospital, and I then had to meet all of those boundaries so closely, rather than just being like, no, fuck off. And I did that for the first part of the pregnancy. I said, no, I haven't got preeclampsia, so I'm not coming anywhere near you. And then had to, at the end, when I did get preeclampsia, meet the boundaries. And we had to acknowledge and play with that. And, you know, just like you say, the communication, all of those things was so important.
And interestingly, you know, just thinking about, you know, the position you're in at that point, you're so vulnerable as well, aren't you? You know, when you're ill, you're so vulnerable. So it's such a hard time to actually pull that strength up to kind of hold that boundary, which is where I guess, you know, in the birth world, you have a doula, you know, who hopefully has got your back or something. But and also that continuity of care as well, isn't it? It's kind of, you know, you just get shipped from doctor to doctor or midwife to midwife, and you know, that continuity of care is really missing. And that's where I think, you know, in all those retrospects, having your team, you know, having your people who've got your back, that will support you and keep telling you you're making the right choices, you're not crazy, all that kind of,
yeah, isn't it?
they can make you feel like you're a bit bonkers, you know, like, why would you choose that? It's like, yeah.
Amazing. Gosh. Okay. So let's have another think about some questions. So what were so you mentioned briefly about your parents. What sort of boundaries were you brought up in, or what were your boundaries before you started doing any work on yourself? What were they like?
I'd say I probably didn't have any. as an empath and as a child that didn't know what that meant, you know, I'd say I was probably very codependent, and I always had a best friend, and we completely merged, and we would become each other, you know. It's like we like the same music, the same boys, the same clothes, you know, all that kind of thing. Yeah, and being raised by a mother who was very boundaried and a father that had no boundaries. So, you know, if mum said no, dad would say yes. So very confusing. And then mum and dad would have a big row about it. And then you'd feel like you'd caused the row. So, yeah, it was tricky. And I guess it was, you know, I had my first child at 18. So, you know, I very quickly had to learn those parenting skills. And that was when I would say I've started working on myself, because I knew that I didn't want to be like my parents, but I didn't know what else there was. So I started reading all these books and going to parenting classes. And I kind of had this idea that, you know, I just let my kids be free, and I, you know, like child-led rearing kind of thing. And I'd be their best friend rather than be their mum, and they could just call me by my name and not call me mum. And then I learned quite quickly, because my second child, he's autistic, so he really needed boundaries, he really needed structure, he really needed routine. And I realized that in order to feel safe, children need those boundaries. And actually adults do too. You know, it's kind of that container, isn't it? It's like, you know, you can't just say to your kids, what do you want for dinner? Because they'll be like, oh God, I could have pizza, I could have ice cream. You know, you have to kind of go, do you want soup or do you want, you know, vegetable bolognese? It's like 2 choices is enough for that little mind to deal with. But I had to learn that. And I've always said my children are my biggest teachers. They teach us so much. Yeah. So yeah, that's where, and I in my early 20s I went into working with addicts and, you know, my own addiction stuff as well, and realizing that, you know, most addicts have codependent issues. You know, they're trying to fill a hole, you know, with whatever substances they're using, and that hole can be filled with other people as well, and, you know, those kind of clingy, needy relationships. So yeah, it's, you know, I continue to work with addicts now. I've been working with addicts for nearly 25 years. I love it. It's such rewarding work. But yeah, it's kind of, it's that I would say most of them are kind of, they're sensitives and they've been through trauma or whatever. And it's like, you know, that why else would we be reaching for a substance that to change how we feel, you know? And it's kind of learning to live in the world without, you know, reaching for those things that, and we all do it, phones, food, shopping. It doesn't have to be something that's destructive. It's, yeah, kind of, we live in a addictive world, I think. But that, yeah, working with that trauma it's very rewarding. Yeah,
absolutely. So thinking about people who might consider themselves to be an empath, who maybe struggle in certain relationships or all relationships with their boundaries. So maybe they might be really unboundaried people because they can sense what other people need and want and are going through. What is you mentioned before, toolkit. What would you say to them? What would be your suggested toolkit for them of what they can do in the moment?
Well, the breath is the most powerful tool we have. I'm sure it's been mentioned so many times, but yeah, taking a breath. I mean, for me, you know, it's in the moment, breathing, you know, coming back to yourself, coming back to your own bubble. Kind of, you know, when I learned Reiki, I remember kind of, you know, you're putting your hands on someone. What am I feeling? Am I feeling my stuff? Am I feeling their stuff? You know, and really having to separate that. So it's really getting to know yourself. You know, it's like on a really deep level. So for me, actually, I need to spend quite a lot of time on my own. You know, I love being with people, but then I kind of need a few days to kind of almost get over that. You know, I mean, if it's your tribe that you're all on the same wavelength, then it's a different thing. But like say I'm going to a party and there's, you know, so many people there and I don't know them very well, whatever, you know, I often get a bit overwhelmed and just pull back, you know, go find a quiet space, breathe, ground. You know, for me it's always about ground and connect with the earth. If you can get outside, great. If you can lie on the earth, even better. It's not always possible if it's wet or whatever, but that connection with nature resets me. So it is about finding what resets you. You know, I mean, I've loved doing like Wim Hof breathing. I find that kind of breath work is such a good reset. You know, it's interesting, this morning I did a Kundalini yoga class and it was all about solar plexus and it was all about boundaries and it was about using the mantra Sat Nam, I am truth. You know, it's like, I was like, oh, perfect for this morning. Love those synchronicities. Yeah, but you know, and in the wider, you know, sort of sphere of life, it is about having those practices, meditation, you know, really, you know, looking at your own stuff, looking at your shadow, knowing what's yours. You know, so it might be that you need to have counselling or you need to have support with that. You know, I'm sure like doing courses like yours, there's so many tools out there that are available. But you know, for me, and using TRE, I don't know, you know, trauma release exercises where you do the shaking. You know, that's what I had to use after many phone calls with the hospital because it was just like unbelievable. Sometimes you put the phone down and that you know, the fear that they've just put on you is going through your body. So it's like, how do I get rid of this fear? It's not mine. I don't want it in my body. So let's, you know, it's what animals do. They go and shake it out. So just let your body shake, get rid of it, or lie on the earth, you know, imagine it going through your body, going into the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Thank you. I feel like we've very calmly covered quite a lot.
Yeah.
Sounds great. What else? Is there anything else you want to talk about with boundaries, or anything that's popped in your head? Anything about, you know, differing relationships, how boundaries can be different with your relationship with that person and with that person? You know, you can hear quite different people get different boundaries with different people in different situations. Is there anything on that subject that you would like to add, maybe?
Yeah, I suppose what comes to mind when you're saying that, just kind of thinking again, sort of back to when I did my Reiki training and learning that energy work. And I never understood why with some people you had this instant click of like, oh, I've known you before, and you know, I feel like I've known you forever. And then other people you just were like, oh, you know, and feeling like I was judging them because there was something that just wasn't resonating. And I kind of came to the conclusion that it's like magnets, one way round and the other way round, you know, and that's okay. It's okay that we don't get on with everybody, or that their energy doesn't gel with us. And you know, when I was younger, I would kind of force myself through that and just be like, I'm sure they're really a nice person, and then often went, oh, I really wish I'd listened to that first. It's like your gut instinct, isn't it? That kind of
Yeah.
Well, you know, where you end up completely drained by them because they're really needy or whatever it is. You know, there's something that your body, your energy is telling you. But also on the other hand of like not getting so enmeshed with people that you know, you fall in love with them because they're just so amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, keeping that boundary of like, we're all human, and you know, everyone's just muddling through life as best they can. And yeah, we, you know, some people have that shining kind of amazing energy that you're just so attracted to, and you want to be with them. You know, they're the people that you want to hang out with as much as possible because their energy is so positive. I mean, my acupuncturist like that. He's just, you know, just go and have acupuncture and I just get this amazing boost of his energy as well because he's so positive for an hour, and that's it, you know. Yeah. And that again is, you know, it's another boundary, isn't it? How much time you spend with people. And knowing that, you know, I have really good friends that I've known for years and years and years that still, you know, are in that needy kind of codependent place. You just limit your time with them. You know, it's like, still, it doesn't mean you don't have to be friends with them, but it's kind of like, I can give you this much of my time, and that's my boundary. Yeah.
I like that. I'm hearing, what I'm getting from that is that it's all okay. Yeah. You know, you don't have to be one way, the other. You don't have to beat yourself up for this, for that, and it's all okay. And you always come back to you in the center. Like there's always this central point of you, and whatever reactions you have in different situations with different people, they are true and they are right, and you can be with those, you know. And I think one of the things when I was researching this work over the last few years has been, it's been that, yeah, sometimes you need to shout a no, and sometimes you need to get angry with a no. And maybe sometimes when you start saying no for the first time, if you've been super codependent all your life, or not even realized you've been codependent all your life, but a no is really difficult. When you start saying no, yeah, it can be an angry no to begin with in all situations. And you go, oh, I've just been really angry. And that's okay, because that's needed. And it's a bit like, that's the no that you've been needing to say all of those times through your life. And it's just come out really fiercely because it's built up so much. And then as you practice it and you keep practicing it, it becomes much more gentle. And it can be really gorgeously said with a gentle no, you know. It's all okay.
We did a beautiful exercise with our mum and daughter group once where we were talking to the girls about saying no, and really saying no from your gut. And we got them to imagine like firing a bow and arrow just with different no's. It's like, say a fierce no, say a soft no, you know, kind of, or imagining the person you want to say no to. And it's so powerful. So, you know, that's another one, is just like practice your no's when you're on your own. You know, just like those different, like, no, absolutely not. You know, yeah, I mean, I've been in those situations where, you know, shouting your no, and there are some people who don't get boundaries, and, you know, I'm, touch wood, you know, I don't think I attract those people into my life anymore, but I used to. And I'd just be like, how come they're stepping over my boundaries? And it's just like, they just don't see them. They have no clue there's a boundary there.
It's interesting you say that about them just not coming into your life anymore, because I think for people that may be thinking about doing this course or starting doing any boundaries work, they might be, I'm often told by people, oh, I really attract those people. And like you, they just don't come into my life anymore. And I think as soon as you start doing your work, you just start changing the energy that you attract. So if you're the yin and the yang, you know, if you're really far one side of the spectrum of boundaries, you're going to attract the opposite, aren't you? Yeah. So if you when you start doing the work with your boundaries and start working with yourself and your own sovereignty, those people just aren't going to appear anymore. You know, yeah. It's so funny. Someone said to me this morning, I'm really sorry for messaging you. You must be really busy. And I'm like, I'm not actually. I'm not actually really busy, because people don't bother me very much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if you've ever looked at, there's like a program called 7 Words program, which was something I worked with years ago. One of my birth teachers works with it. She wrote the book, the 7 Secret Words of Birth. And it's yes, no, hello, goodbye, please, thank you, sorry. And, you know, which one are you the strongest in? And I'm a no, and my husband's a yes. So we kind of balance each other out. And sometimes I have to say to him, should I have said yes there? You know, should that have been a yes?
Nice.
It's an interesting kind of program to work with, just to kind of see, because I know people who are sorry, you know, those ones that start everything with I'm sorry, almost like sorry for existing. And it's kind of like, right, okay,
yes,
let's work with you and your yes and your no.
Absolutely. So just briefly before we finish, you've just made me think about something that's been going through my mind over the last few days, and I've been wondering whether I should add it into the course or just do a blog post or something on it, is a yes being this receptive. And I write about receiving, and we work with that in the course, but it's just been coming up a lot over the last few days of when you start saying yes, because one of your courses is about abundance, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you start saying yes, are you then shifting the boundary to attract things in? Are you opening up to welcome them?
Yeah, it's kind of shifting that energy, isn't it? Because I think maybe for some people, like you were talking about empaths, we need to learn that no first, almost, before we can kind of step into an authentic yes. So it's not that you're saying yes because you feel you should say yes, or, you know, out of guilt or people pleasing, whatever. It's like that yes to the universe, you know, that yes. And actually, it's interesting, throughout my chemotherapy, I decided not that I'd say yes to everything, you know, that's going to be unhealthy, but I was going to say yes to life. You know, it's like, I want to live life completely fully. I've faced death. And given this diagnosis, I've faced death. I'm going to say yes to life. And I probably went to more gatherings, parties, circles than I have in the last 10 years that I wasn't holding. You know, it was like, I'm going to go to everything that's happening. It's just like, I had the best time. I became the party queen. You know, it was just like, and I'd been a recluse for so long, just kind of holding my circles. And it was just like, God, I had such fun. And it was just, the energy in my life just shifted completely. So
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all your sharing. Is there anything that you want to add before we finish?
No, I don't think so. I think just fill your tool belt. It's just like, that's what it feels like these times are about, really. It's just, you know, the tools to navigate what we're all going through. and put them in practice, because it's not just about putting them in the box, is it? It's actually using them. And I was really good at collecting them and putting them in the box and forgetting to use them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, I think that's why we need each other to kind of remind ourselves. It's like, have you remembered to do your breath work today? Have you done some movement? Have you been in nature?
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Rachel. Loads to think about.
Thank you.
And stay well and stay happy, and I hope everyone comes and does something with you, some of your beautiful drums or one of your courses as well. So
thank you so much.
Love you.
Love.
Bye, Rachel. Take care.